Good morning, friends. Mohammad Reza Shah had never been known as a courageous man, so this latest show of prudence did not surprise Roosevelt. The two men decided that the safest place for the Shah to hide was the hunting lodge that the royal family maintained near Ramsar on the Caspian coast. There was an airstrip nearby, which the Shah found reassuring. If by any horrible chance things go wrong, he indelicately told Roosevelt, the Empress and I will take our plane straight to Baghdad. The two men met for the last time in the pre-dawn of August 9th. Before bidding the Shah farewell, Roosevelt felt it correct to thank him for his decision to cooperate, reluctant though it had been. This was a historic moment, and something beyond the ordinary was appropriate. Roosevelt came up with a wonderful way to embellish his message. "Your Majesty, I received earlier this evening a cable from Washington," he prevaricated. "President Eisenhower has asked that I convey to you this word. I wish your Imperial Majesty Godspeed. If the Pavelis and the Roosevelts working together cannot solve this little problem, then there is no hope anywhere. I have complete faith that you will get this done." It was agreed that a CIA courier would bring the vital firmans to the palace early the next morning. The Shah would sign them, and then fly immediately to his refuge at Ramsar. All seemed perfectly arranged. When Roosevelt returned to his villa with the good news, he and his agent celebrated with an exuberant drinking binge. He finally made it to bed at 5 o'clock. A few hours later he was awakened by the cursing of an aide. There had been a last-minute failure. The courier, who was to obtain the Shah's signature, had turned up late at the palace. When he arrived, the royal couple was gone. Whether this was a simple misconnection or a last-minute attempt by the Shah to run from signing the firmans, Roosevelt was determined that it not be allowed to upset his plan. These firmans played an indispensable role in the coup he had designed. They provided not just a fig leaf of legality, but the operation's central organizing principle. If the Shah was not in Tehran to sign them, they would have to be brought to wherever he was. The man best equipped to help at this moment, Roosevelt quickly realized, was Colonel Nassiri of the Imperial Guard. He was a strong royalist, could find and fly a plane, and was on intimate terms with the Shah. The arrangements were quickly made, and this time the connection worked. Nassiri flew to Ramsar, obtained the Shah's scribbled signature on both firmans, and then, because bad weather prevented him from taking off, sent them to Tehran by car. Roosevelt and his comrades spent the day waiting impatiently around their pool, with no idea of what was taking Nassiri so long. When night fell, they took to smoking, playing cards, and drinking vodka with lime. Tehran was under a 9 o'clock curfew, but after that hour passed they still hoped someone would turn up. It was almost midnight when they heard shouts at the gate. They ran to open it. Outside was a small throng of unshaven and very excited Iranians. Most of them they did not recognize. They pushed a packet to Roosevelt, who opened it gingerly. Inside there were 2 firmans duly signed by His Imperial Majesty. After jubilantly embracing his new friends, Roosevelt considered how quickly he could now move. He was much dismayed when his agents told him there would have to be one more delay. The weekend, which Iranians observe on Thursday and Friday, was about to begin, and Iranians did not like to conduct business, much less overthrow governments, on weekends. Roosevelt reluctantly agreed to postpone the coup until Saturday night, August 15th. Confident of their plan, but acutely aware that each passing hour increased the chance of betrayal, Roosevelt and his comrades spent 3 excruciating days at poolside. Saturday was the hardest to bear because the moment of truth was so near. Roosevelt later wrote that on that day time moved more slowly than anything we had ever lived through before. By now Roosevelt had moved his command post to a basement in the American embassy compound. His Iranian agents visited him less frequently, but they were busier than ever at their subversive work, as a CIA report on the coup makes clear. At this same time, the psychological campaign against Mossadegh was reaching its climax. A controllable press was going all out against Mossadegh, while understation direction was printing material which the station considered to be helpful. CIA agents gave serious attention to alarming the religious leaders at Tehran by issuing black propaganda in the name of the Communist Tudeh Party, threatening these leaders with savage punishment if they opposed Mossadegh. Threatening phone calls were also made to them in the name of the Tudeh, and one of the several sham bombings of the houses of these leaders was carried out. The word that the Shah would support direct action on his behalf spread rapidly through the colonel's conspiracy fostered by the situation. Zahedi saw Station Principal Agent Colonel and named him as a liaison officer with the Americans and as his choice to supervise the staff planning for the action. On 14 August, the station cabled that upon the conclusion of Operation Ajax, the Zahedi government, in view of the empty treasury of the country, would be in urgent need of funds. The sum of 5 million was suggested, and CIA was asked to produce this sum almost within hours after the conclusion of the operation. Now, in the words of that CIA report, there was nothing that either the station or headquarters could do except wait for action to begin. When dusk finally began falling over Tehran on August 15th, Roosevelt climbed into his Hillman Minks taxi, flipped down the on-call sign, and drove to a nearby safe house where his agents had gathered to await the news of victory. As vodka flowed, they sang along with the records of Broadway show tunes. Their favorite was "Luck Be a Lady Tonight" from the musical Guys and Dolls. By acclamation, they adopted it as the official Operation Ajax theme song. They call you Lady Luck, but there is no room for doubt. At times you have a very unladylike way of running out. You're on this date with me, the pickings have been lush, and yet before the evening is over you might give me the brush. You might forget your manners, you might refuse to stay, so the best that I can do is pray, luck be a lady tonight. As Roosevelt drove back to the American embassy later that evening, his route took him past the residence of General Raihi, the military chief of staff. He enjoyed the coincidence. If his plan worked, General Raihi would be behind bars in a few hours. The officer Roosevelt had chosen to arrest the chief of staff and the prime minister that night, Colonel Nasiri, seemed ideal for the operation. He believed in the primacy of royal power and loathed Mossadegh. His command of the 700-man Imperial Guard gave him control of considerable resources. By successfully obtaining the vital firearms at a crucial moment, he seemed to have proven his reliability. Vital ferments, not firearms. At the night of August 15th, however, Nasiri was not thinking clearly enough. It was well after 11 o'clock when he arrived at General Raihi's home and found it abandoned. He was untroubled and simply ordered his men to proceed toward Mossadegh's residence. Unbeknownst to him, another military column was also on its way there. General Raihi had learned of the coup and sent troops to foil it. The precise identity of the informant has never been established. Most guesses center on a military officer who belonged to a secret communist cell. There may have been more than one informant. In the end, what happened was precisely what Roosevelt feared. Too many people knew about the plot for too long. A leak was all but inevitable. In the confusing hours around midnight, Tehran was bursting with plots and counterplots. Some rebellious officers learned of the betrayal in time to abort their missions. Others, not realizing that they were compromised, went ahead. One seized the telephone office at the bazaar. Another roused Foreign Minister Hussein Fatimi from bed and dragged him away barefoot and shouting. The future of constitutional rule in Iran depended on which column of soldiers reached Mossadegh's house first. Shortly before 1 o'clock in the morning, the rebel columns drove up Cox Street? past the corner of Heshmatdola and stopped. Here Mossadegh lived with his wife in a small apartment, part of a large complex that his family had owned for many years. The gate was closed. Colonel Nasiri stepped out to demand entry. In his hand he held the firman dismissing Mossadegh from office. Behind him stood several files of soldiers. Colonel Nasiri had arrived too late. Moments after he appeared at the gate, several loyal commanders stepped from the shadows. They escorted him into a jeep and drove him to General Staff Headquarters. There General Raihi denounced him as a traitor, ordered him stripped of his uniform, and sent him to a cell. The man who was to have arrested Mossadegh was now himself a prisoner. Roosevelt had no way of knowing that any of this was happening. Was at his embassy command post, waiting for Colonel Nasiri to call. Tanks clattered by several times, but the telephone never rang. Roosevelt's apprehensions deepened as dawn broke. Radio Tehran did not begin its transmissions at 6 o'clock as normal. Then, an hour later, it crackled to life with a burst of military music, followed by the reading of an official communiqué. Roosevelt did not speak Persian, but feared the worst when he heard the announcer use the word Mossadegh. Then Mossadegh himself came on the air, announcing victory over a coup attempt organized by the Shah and foreign elements. The Shah, cowering at his seaside villa, was also listening. As soon as he grasped what had happened, he roused his wife and told her it was time to run. They quickly packed 2 small briefcases, grabbed what clothes they could carry in their arms, and walked briskly out toward their twin-engine Beechcraft. The Shah, a trained pilot, took the controls and set a course for Baghdad. After arriving there, he told the American ambassador that he would be looking for work shortly, as he has a large family and very small means outside Iran. While the Shah was fleeing, military units loyal to the government were fanning out through Tehran. City life quickly returned to normal. Several conspirators were arrested and others went into hiding. A reward was offered for the capture of General Zahedi. CIA operatives made mad dashes back to the security of the American embassy or safe houses. Jubilant crowds took to the streets, chanting, "Victory to the nation, and Mossadegh has won!" Inside his embassy compound, Roosevelt felt himself close to despair. He had no choice but to send a cable to Washington saying that things had gone terribly wrong. John Waller, the head of the CIA's Iran desk, read it with great disappointment. Waller feared for the lives of his agents, and he sent Roosevelt an urgent reply. No copy of it is known to exist. According to CIA lore, it was an order that Roosevelt leave Iran immediately. Many years later, though, Waller said that it was not so categorical. Its message, he recalled, was, "If you're in a jam, get out so you don't get killed. But if you're not in a jam, go ahead and do what you have to do." Things looked bleak for the plotters. They had lost the advantage of surprise. Several of their key agents were out of action. Their anointed Prime Minister, General Zahedi, was in hiding. The Shah had fled. Foreign Minister Fatimi, free after several hours in rebel custody, was making fiery speeches denouncing the Shah for his collaboration with foreign agents. "Oh, traitor!" Fatimi railed before one crowd. The moment you heard by Tehran radio that your foreign plot had been defeated, you fled to the nearest country where Britain has an embassy." Operation Ajax had failed. Radio Tehran reported that the situation was well under control, and so it seemed. Shockwaves reverberated through CIA headquarters in Washington. Then suddenly, around mid-evening, Roosevelt cabled a most unexpected message. He had decided to stay in Tehran and improvise another stab at Mossadegh. The CIA had sent him to overthrow the government of Iran, and he was determined not to leave until he had done it. Have a good day, friends.